David diligently packed his suitcase, methodically placing each item with care. He scanned his surroundings, his eyes darting from one corner of the room to another, ensuring he hadn't overlooked any of his belongings. His fingers sifted through the contents of his sturdy briefcase, verifying that all of his important documents were safely tucked inside. Upon being certain that he had everything in order, David decided to make a call. He picked up his phone and dialed his mother's number. "Mom," he began, the tone of his voice holding a hint of excitement. "I've booked my flight. It's scheduled for 7 p.m. tonight." His mother's voice echoed through the phone, full of warmth and concern. "How are you holding up, son?" she inquired. "Everything's falling into place perfectly," he responded, sounding more surprised than he had intended. "Honestly, I didn't anticipate things turning out this well." "That's fantastic news," his mother replied, her voice brightening with pride. "You now have the skills to manage any of our family restaurants. Although," her voice faltered a little, "I still can't grasp why you were so bothered by that birthmark." David's laughter filled the silence that followed. "Well, Mom," he began, a playful grin tugging at the corner of his lips, "I know to you I'm the most handsome man, birthmark or no birthmark." His mother chuckled, a warm, pleasant sound. All right, I'll drop it," she relented. "I'll always respect your choices. Just know we're all eagerly waiting for your arrival here." David's heart swelled at her words. "I'm just as excited to see all of you, Mom. I miss your home-cooked meals." His voice held a tinge of nostalgia, bringing forth memories of familiar flavors and warmth. After ending the call, David set the phone down, a nostalgic smile gracing his face. It had been a full year since he last set foot in his beloved hometown. A yearning for home had nestled itself deep in his heart, growing stronger with each passing day. Truth be told, leaving home was the last thing he desired, yet he knew the family business needed him. He understood that expanding and strengthening their restaurant empire required his personal involvement and dedication. David knew that without infusing new life into their venerable family restaurant, the rapidly evolving trends in the industry, coupled with advanced technologies and innovative marketing strategies, could easily engulf it. He understood that stagnation was a luxury they could not afford, not when the world of culinary businesses was racing forward at such a breakneck pace. While David's concerns might have been somewhat overstated, their family-owned restaurants were after all quite profitable. His ambitions extended beyond merely maintaining the status quo. David craved something unique, something distinctive. He aspired to create something within their restaurant business that was unparalleled, something truly one of a kind that nobody else could lay claim to. A year prior, the family council had reached the consensus. David would venture abroad to deepen his understanding of the restaurant business, but his journey overseas was not solely driven by business aspirations. It was also fueled by a deeply personal motive, the urgent need to address his noticeable birthmark, which had been gradually creeping down from his forehead, dangerously close to his eye. This compelling urge to seek medical help abroad added an unexpected dimension to his forthcoming journey. The birthmark had just begun to encroach upon his upper eyelid, yet its presence had a profound impact on David's self-esteem. Despite its relatively innocuous nature, he found himself feeling increasingly self-conscious about it. His father bore an identical birthmark, though it was slightly smaller and less conspicuous. Over time, family members and friends had grown accustomed to it, barely registering its existence. It had become just another feature, unremarkable and rarely a subject of conversation. David might have grown accustomed to his birthmark over time, as his father did, yet he was impatient. He yearned to blend in, to look normal as per societal standards. He wished to be free of his distinctive mark, to present a face untouched by nature's unusual paintbrush. Everything was planned with the surgeon, and on the day when David was supposed to undergo a surgery removing his birthmark, the doctor suddenly announced that he had a feeling David should keep it. "I don't know, David. I just have a weird feeling that we shouldn't touch it." Stepping off the airport shuttle, David finally arrived at his cherished family home. Even though only a year had passed since he last left, he felt an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. His heart brimmed with longing as he strolled through the familiar corridors of his childhood home. Every corner of the house was laden with memories, every object stirring up echoes of his past. Later, they gathered in the warm comfort of their living room, nestled amongst familiar furniture and family photographs. David began to share his experiences from his time in Korea, tales filled with new learning, adventures, and personal growth. Each anecdote he shared was a testament to the multitude of lessons he had gleaned from his overseas journey. David's father, Ben, was impressed by the insights. He knew David had done a good job and not just wasted his time partying or doing something else. The family discussion veered towards David's impending role in the family business. A question hung in the air. So, where do you want to start? Which restaurant would you like to manage? David responded with a smile, taking a brief pause to compose his thoughts. Dad, I believe I still have much to learn, so I've been considering starting from the ground up, and I'd prefer if my true identity remained a secret to the staff. His father, Ben, raised an eyebrow at his unusual request, a smirk dancing on his lips. He was surprised, yet visibly proud of his son's humility and desire to truly understand the business. Struggling to keep his pride from showing too much, Ben replied, Really? Well, that's an intriguing decision. I suppose it does make sense. It'll certainly provide you with a unique perspective." After a moment's thought, Ben offered a proposition. "I think we can address two issues at once. The team at Pine Tree Restaurant is relatively new. I've had to replace almost everyone. We've been facing some challenges there, so perhaps that would be a good place for you to start." Pondering further, Ben suggested, "What about starting as an assistant to the manager?" "That works," David agreed, determination flickering in his eyes. "I will strive to make the Pine Tree Restaurant thrive." While father and son dove deep into their discussion, Rachel, David's mother, sat nearby, a gentle smile adorning her face. She quietly marveled at the sight before her, her husband and son conversing like equals, like two seasoned businessmen. A rush of gratitude filled her heart for the family she had and the growth she had witnessed. Ben noticed her smile, and with a touch of curiosity asked, "What? Why are you smiling like that, honey?" She chuckled softly before replying, "Nothing. I'm just admiring both of you. It feels like just yesterday when David was a little boy, and now he's sitting here discussing business with you. Anyways, you boys continue your conversation. I'll go and get some rest. It's getting late and I still need to wake up early to prepare breakfast for you two." With that, she left them to their discussion, her heart full of love and pride. On his first day at Pine Tree, David's responsibilities were relatively light. His primary task was to shadow the manager, Liam, and document observations. Despite being only a few years older than David, Liam carried himself with a distinct air of authority. His confident demeanor and the way he held his head high bespoke a man who knew the importance of his role. "All right, David, make sure you take diligent notes. We're one of the best restaurants in town," Liam proclaimed proudly as they toured the establishment, discussing the standard operating procedures in place. David couldn't help but query, "Excuse me, Liam, but I've heard rumors that the restaurant isn't faring too well lately." Taken aback, Liam retorted, "Who told you that?" "Those are likely false rumors spread by our competitors. The operations here are systematic, but only if—" His sentence trailed off, capturing David's attention. David, maintaining eye contact, prompted, "Only if— what?" He waited for Liam to complete his thought. Brushing it aside, Liam simply responded, "Never mind. It's always better to see things for yourself than to hear about them. You'll understand soon." Just then, Liam's focus shifted to a worker hurrying across the room. He called out, "Where are you heading off to, Emily? You can't just take breaks whenever you feel like it." Startled, Emily halted in her tracks, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, I wasn't actually taking a break, Mr. Allen. I was trying to find you." Liam seemed taken aback. "Looking for me? I'm standing right here, and you're dashing past me as though I'm invisible. What's the matter?" A flash of determination sparked in Emily's eyes. "Some of the produce we received today is spoiled. I mean, we'll surely have to discard at least half of it," Emily informed them. Liam directed a knowing smile at David. "Well, our newcomer heard it too. What can we say?" "You'll understand." Turning back to Emily, he asked, "What about the other half? Is it fine? Can we use it?" "Yes," Emily confirmed. "Well, then what's the problem? Go ahead and use the other half." However, Emily, apparently taken aback by Liam's response, tried to argue. "Mr. Allen, we could have paid a little more and received better quality, fresher produce." Liam curtly dismissed her. "Emily, get back to work. Don't involve yourself in matters you don't understand. You're a chef's assistant, aren't you? Then go assist the chef. We don't need your unsolicited advice." Emily walked away, her eyes flashing with indignation. Liam turned back to David. "She's still young and naive. She knows nothing about running a business. Some people just like to point out problems," he commented dismissively about Emily. David, not completely agreeing with Liam's perspective, asked, "But don't you think she has a point? If you purchase slightly more expensive but fresher produce, wouldn't it turn out to be more cost-effective for the restaurant in the long run?" Liam listened to David's question with a smirk on his face. "You see, David, there's something you don't understand. Cheaper for whom?" "That's right, for the owners. But for us, it just means more work and more problems." "Do we get the same salary if we work harder?" "Yes." "Do we get the same salary if we work less?" "You guessed it. Yes." "As for the owners, they're so wealthy, they don't need to be even richer." Following Liam down the hallway, David reflected on the day's events. He considered how his father had confidently claimed to have replaced the restaurant staff with better, more efficient workers, yet based on what he had observed today, it seemed that this new personnel, specifically the manager, might actually be far worse than their predecessors. He realized there was a gap between his father's perception and the on-ground reality, and it was a gap he was determined to bridge. David found his thoughts persistently drifting back to Emily. Her words had struck a chord with him, and he couldn't help but replay their conversation over and over in his mind. Her sincere concern for the restaurant's efficiency and quality resonated with him, and her perspective seemed more in line with his own than with Liam's dismissive attitude. As a week elapsed, David had only encountered Emily once more since their initial meeting. On this occasion, she was once again engaged in a debate with Liam, this time about the quality of the meat. Her consistent dedication to maintaining high standards was noticeable and further deepened David's interest in her perspective. "Emily, are you actively trying to get yourself fired? Can't you just do your job and keep quiet?" Liam's voice boomed through the kitchen. His patience had worn thin due to Emily's frequent criticisms about the restaurant's operations. Unfazed by Liam's outburst, Emily shot back. "Go ahead and fire me, sir. I'll take my concerns directly to the owners." Liam was visibly taken aback by Emily's bold response. Recovering his composure, he responded with a taunting sneer. "Is that so? Well, Mrs. Braveheart. Make sure you tread carefully on your way back from the boss's office." David knew he had to step in. Despite the potential risk of revealing his true identity, he couldn't stand by silently in the face of Liam's overt threat. His sense of justice and concern for Emily's well-being compelled him to take action. "I don't believe it's appropriate for you to speak to her in that manner," David interjected firmly, his voice carrying a calm authority. Liam pivoted to face David, his eyes burning with unmasked fury. However, recognizing the shifting balance of power, he decided to retreat, silently exiting the room without another word. The following day, as David finished his shift, he noticed Emily waiting at the bus stop. His car was parked a block away, but the thought of driving home didn't even cross his mind. Instead, he found himself walking towards the bus stop. As he neared, Emily spotted him and greeted him with a warm smile. Catching her welcoming expression, David immediately spoke up. "He's quite the character, isn't he?" he commented, referring to Liam as he arrived at the bus stop. "I hope you're not taking his words to heart," he added, hoping to reassure her. Emily returned his concern with a grateful smile. "Thanks for standing up for me." For the next 10 minutes, as they awaited the bus, they engaged in light conversation about work, with David asking Emily general questions about her role. When the bus finally arrived, Emily stepped aboard, assuming that David was waiting for a different bus. To her surprise, however, David followed her onto the bus. "Oh, you're taking the same bus?" Emily asked, surprised. "Yeah, this is my bus. I get off on the east side," David responded, despite having no real idea of where the bus was headed. Emily chuckled. "Well, you should have done your homework. This bus doesn't go to the east side." Their shared laughter filled the bus. In the spirit of adventure, they agreed to disembark at the next stop and continued their journey on foot. That day was the catalyst for a blooming friendship between David and Emily. Together, they found an undeniable connection, always having a topic to engage in lively discussions about. They discovered a multitude of shared interests, which made it seem as if they would never exhaust their reservoir of conversation topics. Their bond grew steadily, forged by countless shared experiences and the mutual respect for one another's perspectives. During one of their routine walks home after work, Emily decided to open up to David about the real reasons behind Liam's apparent disdain for her. This shared moment of vulnerability was a testament to the trust and comfort they had built within their friendship. "We certainly have very different perspectives on many things," Emily began, her voice wavering slightly. "When Liam first became the manager, he decided he was some big shot and everyone should cower in fear of him. To make matters worse, he started to act as if all the girls in the restaurant were his possessions. So I did what anyone would do in my position." At this point, Emily noticed David watching her with rapt attention, encouraging her to continue. "I hit him with a wine bottle once," she blurted out. David's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Why? What led to that?" he asked, taken aback by the unexpected revelation. "Well, he grabbed my arm and said something particularly unsavory," she explained. David mulled over Emily's words for a moment, struggling to find the right response. When nothing more appropriate came to mind, he offered his candid thoughts. "You know what, Emily? I'm not surprised you did that. People like him deserve a wake-up call, whether that's a wine bottle to the head or a serious reality check." One day, they found themselves sitting on the restaurant's patio. Emily excused herself, standing up and making her way somewhere else. "David, could you please stay put? I'll be right back. I'm just expecting someone," Emily requested before disappearing from sight. David was left with unanswered questions, but decided to patiently wait for Emily. A moment later, he didn't need to wonder anymore. A young boy appeared from around the corner. He was looking around warily. His attire was far from fashionable. In fact, it could hardly be described as suitable. He halted in front of David, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. "Hello, mister. Do you have any leftovers today?" the boy asked in a voice far too mature for his age. Then Emily also came around the corner. She looked worried as well. She was holding a plate of food. With the boy busily devouring his meal, facing away from them, Emily caught David's puzzled gaze. Sensing his curiosity, she softly began to narrate the child's story, careful to keep her voice low so as not to draw his attention. As Emily explained, it appeared that the young boy had been visiting the restaurant regularly for a while. However, his visits had ceased for a few months following a complaint lodged by a customer to the management. As Emily elaborated, she recounted a day when Charlie had been sitting on the restaurant's doorstep. As a man in a white suit emerged, Charlie promptly stood up and extended a plastic cup towards him. The man reacted by looking at Charlie with evident revulsion, letting out a sharp scream. "Stay back, you little imp! You're gonna dirty my suit!" the man snarled at Charlie. Charlie swiftly apologized, yet continued to gaze at the man with a faint smile on his face. "I'm sorry, sir," he quietly asked. "Could you possibly buy some food for me?" The man, however, blatantly ignored Charlie's plea and hastily retreated back into the restaurant. He was seething with indignation over the absence of security guards or a dedicated person responsible for keeping the homeless and beggars away from such an upscale dining establishment. "Summon the manager," the man demanded with a raised voice. Upon hearing the commotion, Liam hurried over to the agitated customer. His sole aim was to placate the man and maintain the reputation of the restaurant. "You won't see the little beggar again, sir. You have my word," he assured him with a hint of urgency in his voice. As the man in the suit made his way out, Liam turned his attention towards Charlie, sizing him up. It was clear that the boy was living on the streets. His clothes were worn and dirty, and he had a distinct odor that suggested he hadn't had a shower in a while. The sight of him and his current predicament incited a sense of revulsion in Liam. He found it hard to believe how parents could be so negligent and let their children end up in such a state. "Hey, kid, what brings you here?" Liam asked, maintaining a stern demeanor. "Could I have something to eat, sir? Or maybe some spare change?" Charlie pleaded, his voice echoing with hunger and desperation. "Why did you choose this restaurant? Can't you find another place to beg?" Liam questioned, annoyance lighting his words. "I don't know, sir. I come where it smells good. The food here must be very good," Charlie replied, an innocent spark in his eyes. Upon hearing the compliment directed towards the restaurant, Liam's expression shifted, his ego momentarily gratified. "The food here is excellent because I manage this place, lad. Now run along and never come back. If I see your face here again, there'll be trouble for you," Liam threatened, his voice firm and menacing. Liam dismissed Charlie with a wave of his hand. Charlie walked away, rounding the corner of the building. There, he spotted a kitchen worker lugging bags of trash out the back door into the alleyway. Once the worker left, Charlie darted towards the pile of discarded bags. He rummaged through them, quickly identifying containers with remnants of food, leftovers that had not been consumed or had passed their expiration date. As Charlie was rummaging through the containers, desperately seeking something edible, Emily came outside to take a break and get some fresh air. She immediately spotted the small boy digging through the trash, and her heart clenched with sympathy. "Hey, little one, are you searching for something to eat?" Emily asked gently. Charlie jerked his head up in fright, his eyes wide and fearful, poised to run away at the first sign of danger. Seeing this, Emily quickly moved in front of him, blocking his escape route. She held her hands out in a calming gesture and said, Hey, it's okay. Don't be scared. I won't hurt you, alright? Just stay right there. I'll bring you something to eat, okay?" Silently, Charlie nodded, his little shoulders slumping in relief. Emily approached the head chef with an unusual request. "Chef, could you prepare your signature dish for me?" she asked, a hint of urgency in her voice. The chef looked puzzled for a moment, not expecting such a request in the middle of a bustling workday. "For you, Emily?" he questioned, brows furrowing as he wiped his hands on his apron. "Now? In the middle of lunch rush?" "Yes, chef," Emily responded firmly. "It's important." The chef, who was used to seeing Emily completely navigating through the kitchen, trusted her judgment. Even though it was an unusual request, he knew she wouldn't ask without a good reason. So he nodded and started preparing the dish, hoping that his faith in Emily wasn't misplaced. Emily emerged with a plate piled high with an assortment of food. For the next 15 minutes, Charlie sat on the cold pavement, wholly absorbed in the feast before him. He ate slowly, savoring each bite with a contented expression. The meal was undoubtedly the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. His small face, usually marked with the lines of hardship, softened with every mouthful, allowing him to momentarily forget about his daily struggles. Charlie was cautious, not wanting to attract too much attention or arouse suspicion. He knew he was fortunate to receive these meals, and he didn't want to jeopardize that by being too greedy. So Charlie would wait for a few days, trying to quell his hunger with whatever scraps he could find elsewhere before making his way back to the restaurant. Each time he showed up, his face would light up upon seeing Emily approaching with a plate of food. Despite the uncertainty of his situation, those moments brought him comfort and warmth. As time passed, Emily started to realize that food was not the only thing that Charlie craved. Despite his desperate situation, it wasn't just hunger that brought him back to the restaurant time and time again. More than the meals, it seemed he yearned for company, for someone to acknowledge his existence and to listen to him. Charlie would sit quietly as Emily talked, his eyes wide as he listened to stories about the restaurant and her life. He was always eager to share bits and pieces of his own life, taking comfort in the simple act of conversation. His innocent and genuine conversations brought a new perspective to Emily's daily routine, and she found herself looking forward to those moments. His cheerful demeanor, despite his circumstances, deeply touched Emily. She started to view Charlie not as a homeless boy, but as a friend who was just in need of a little kindness and care. Emily felt privileged to be that person for Charlie, even if it was just for a few hours every few days. She couldn't change his situation overnight, but she could make sure he had a safe place to go when things were tough. She was determined to do what she could do to help Charlie, one meal at a time. Charlie was originally from a small town a few miles away from the city. His life there was marred by hardship, largely due to his abusive mother. His father had disappeared from his life when he was very young, and he had been living with his mother ever since. His mother, suffering from substance abuse, frequently lashed out at Charlie. He was often the target of her angry outbursts, which escalated into physical violence more often than not. It was a home environment that no child should have to endure, but for Charlie, it was all he knew. Tired of living in constant fear, Charlie made the difficult decision to run away. He thought that anything would be better than staying in a home where he was not loved or even safe. Charlie had a younger brother named Sam. His mother constantly compared them, always stating that Sam was superior in every aspect. It wasn't so much that Sam was a model child, but more about their mother's need to demean Charlie. Their mother would shower Sam with praises, often at the expense of Charlie. Statements like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" or "Sam never gives me any trouble like you do," were common. It was a constant psychological torment for Charlie, who felt that he could never live up to his mother's expectations, no matter how hard he tried. A few times, well-meaning people in the city noticed Charlie's situation and brought him back to his family, thinking that was the best for him. The local police were even involved on a couple of occasions. Each time, his mother would put on a show, acting remorseful and promising to take better care of her son. However, each return was always short-lived. The false promises of change never came to fruition. The abuse would soon start again, and Charlie would find himself back on the streets, running away from the home that never really felt like one. Charlie's father was more of a phantom than a parent to him. While he knew that his father was somewhere out there, his presence in Charlie's life was virtually non-existent. Charlie had no memories of him, no pictures to look at, no letters to read, nothing tangible that he could hold on to. His mother had mentioned him a few times, mostly when she was upset or drunk. She would make vague references to a man who was irresponsible, unloving, and who had abandoned them. The description was always filled with bitterness and anger, which didn't exactly paint a positive image of his father in Charlie's mind. All he had were a few scattered details that he managed to piece together over the years. His father was tall like him. He had dark hair and blue eyes, just like Charlie, and he had left them when Charlie was just a toddler. Beyond that, Charlie knew nothing else about his father. One day, Charlie took his usual spot in the restaurant's back alley, eagerly waiting for Emily to come out with his food. Instead of Emily, another man emerged from the back door. He was one of the waiters who had seen Emily interact with Charlie a couple of times. "I'm sorry, Charlie. Emily is unwell today. She might not be in for a while," he explained with an apologetic expression. He then handed over a plate of food that he had prepared following Emily's usual instructions. Charlie, although disappointed, accepted the food graciously and left. He returned the following day, hopeful to see Emily, but again, it was the same waiter who came out with his meal. The next few days played out the same way. Charlie arrived, the waiter brought out food for him, and Emily was nowhere to be seen. While the meals were still as delicious as ever, Charlie missed Emily's warm presence and her comforting words. The only individual who remained oblivious to the fact that Charlie was still making appearances was the authoritative figure, the manager named Liam. By sheer coincidence, it just so happened that he chose that moment to step outside for a smoke break. Upon spotting a plate of food positioned on the chair with Charlie loitering nearby, his fury erupted like a volcano. "What on earth is transpiring here?" he bellowed, addressing his wrath initially at the unsuspecting waiter. The startled waiter, caught in the moment, stammered that Charlie was an acquaintance of Emily's. "I recognize you, young man. What did I instruct you previously? And you've decided to disregard that, have you?" "Liam, please, just take it easy. The boy is merely a kid." Ryan attempted to soothe him. "Do you wish to retain your employment, Ryan? If so, you better return to your station and concentrate on your duties." Ryan expressed his disagreement by shaking his head, but deep down he realized there wasn't much else he could do. At this juncture in his life, he simply couldn't risk losing his job. From that day forward, Liam imposed a strict ban on anyone taking food out for the boy. Upon returning to work and discovering the recent events, Emily pleaded with Liam, offering to pay for the food out of her own earnings. Liam glanced at her and conceded, "You may give him leftovers. And only once a week. That's the final limit." Emily finished relating Charlie's story to David, who appeared deeply touched. As he gazed at Charlie, a sense of determination began to rise within him. Just then, Liam, the manager, happened to emerge and noticed Emily and David engaged in their conversation. "Are you interested in ordering anything?" he asked them with a hint of sarcasm. Emily quickly stood up, hoping to divert his attention away from Charlie. Liam ambled towards them, his arms crossed defensively over his chest. When Liam spotted Charlie lurking in the corner, that was the final straw for him. "That's it, Emily. I've reached my limit. I've issued a warning previously. No, Liam, I beg you, don't do this. I'm sorry, I promised to ask him not to show up here anymore. But Liam was unwavering, shaking his head in denial. A smirk then appeared on his face as he addressed them both. Who exactly do you presume yourself to be, lounging around the tables as if you're patrons? Throughout this, David hadn't been paying attention to Liam. He slowly raised his head and said, Liam, I think it would be wise for you to dial it down a notch. Liam's eyebrow arched up in surprise at the bold retort. David, are you serious about maintaining your employment here? I recall how desperate you were when you first arrived, begging for this job. Has that memory escaped you already? Why are you behaving as though you own the place? Liam's voice betrayed his increasing anxiety. David couldn't help but smile at the irony of Liam's last remark before responding. Apologies for any confusion, but it appears you are correct. I am indeed the proprietor of this establishment. David rose from his seat, looking directly into Liam's eyes with a smile. His expression then gradually shifted from amusement to seriousness. You appear unhappy. You may choose to finish your shift if you wish, or depart now. Rest assured, you will be compensated either way. Liam responded with dismissive laughter, muttering some offensive remarks. However, David was no longer paying him any attention. He turned his gaze to Emily, who was shaking her head and smiling in disbelief. I can't believe you managed that. You've been an exceptional actor, maintaining this charade for so long. Later that very night, David approached his father with a major life decision. He expressed his intent to move out and rent his own apartment. Why such a sudden decision? Ben inquired. Did you meet someone? He asked with a playful smile. David chuckled and replied, Yes, indeed, I met someone. In fact, I met two people. Ben was left puzzled as David retreated to his room, his laughter trailing behind him. But Ben was confident that David was mature enough and didn't need to lay out his entire plan. He had trust in his son's decisions. The following day, David woke up early, recharged and in high spirits. Today, there was no need to conceal his luxurious sedan, so he drove straight up and parked right in front of the restaurant. Upon recognizing his car and realizing he was actually the restaurant owner, the staff were taken aback. They admired his ability to blend in seamlessly, particularly appreciating the insightful questions he posed to them. They understood he was a genuine businessman, fully committed to the task at hand. David gathered all the employees and declared Emily as the restaurant's new manager. Emily was astounded. The thought of abruptly becoming a manager was beyond her wildest dreams. She had no grasp of the job and its responsibilities. It took some persuasion from David for Emily to accept the proposal. He assured her that he would guide her through every necessary aspect of the role. Charlie ceased visiting the restaurant, for he no longer needed to. He now resided in a comfortable apartment. Emily and David paid a visit to Charlie's mother. They engaged in a lengthy conversation about Charlie's situation. They empathized with her circumstances and expressed their readiness to support her through her rehabilitation process. In the interim, they proposed to take care of her sons during her time in rehab. Initially, she was skeptical, suspecting they were either fraudsters or social workers aiming to seize her children. But David embraced Charlie's mother, assuring her repeatedly that everything would eventually be all right. She just needed to place her trust in them. David understood the influence of a nurturing environment and education. He didn't want Charlie and his brother to be left to fend for themselves on the streets as they matured. When David took Charlie and Sam to the barbershop for a haircut, the barber informed him that the boys had head lice. The most effective remedy was to shave their heads clean. Upon shaving Charlie's head, a birthmark was revealed. It mirrored the exact shape that David had on his forehead. A smile spread across David's face. Charlie and his younger brother returned to school. David took on the daily routine of driving them to and from school. This routine would prove beneficial as he was set to become a father himself in 3 months' time. 3 months later, a grand celebration was held at the Pine Tree restaurant to mark the birth of David Jr. The entire staff joined the festivities. Charlie, Sam, and their mother Nancy, who had successfully completed rehab and been clean for the past 4 months, were running a bit late to the joyous occasion. As everyone settled into their seats, Nancy walked in with her sons Charlie and Sam, their arms laden with a massive cluster of balloons. Emily and David's eyes widened in surprise as they noticed the slogans on the t-shirts that the trio sported. Charlie's and Sam's shirt declared, "Proud new uncle, it's a boy." Nancy's shirt drew a round of laughter from the crowd. It read, "Go ahead and get into trouble. Auntie's here." The atmosphere was filled with warm embraces and laughter, turning the occasion into a joyful dinner gathering. Standing in one corner, David observed everyone dancing, a smile gracing his face. The only other person not dancing was his father, Ben. He approached David, meeting his eyes with a sharp, knowing look. "David, you never cease to amaze me," he smiled, shaking David's hand. "I'm proud of the man you've become and the company you keep." Just then, Liam emerged from the kitchen, holding a tray filled with glasses. He cast a worried glance towards David, who responded with a reassuring nod. This seemed to put Liam somewhat at ease. David caught the gaze of his wife Emily, who looked at him with a mixture of surprise and a warm smile. Ben also gave David a questioning look. "I don't know, Dad. I thought I'd give him a second chance. I'm planning on transferring him to another restaurant soon, and I believe he's learned a valuable lesson," David explained. Ben eventually retired, and David assumed control of the family restaurant business. Ben spent his retirement years in peace, knowing his son possessed a fair, emotionally balanced personality. David treated his staff equitably and was always ready to lend a hand to those in need. His workers admired and loved him for these qualities, reciprocating with unwavering loyalty and readiness to go the extra mile in recognition of his benevolent nature. A year later, when the country was under lockdown, restaurants suffered massive losses. However, David's staff rallied together, deciding to support the business. They organized a takeaway service, willingly worked extra hours, all to help David weather the storm. Surprisingly, the brain behind this initiative was none other than Liam, who by then had transformed into a dedicated member of the team. Do good for others. It'll come back to you in unexpected